My husband, Edward, my companion of 50 years, gathered what little strength he had left and asked me to lean closer before taking his final breath. The words he whispered into my ear, they weren't just a sorrowful goodbye. They were the key to a terrible secret, one that would expose a betrayal unfolding before my very eyes for years. I'm Margaret, and this is the story of how my husband's death unraveled everything I thought I knew about my life. Edward and I had shared half a century together, 50 long years of joy and sorrow, of building a life side by side and raising our only son, Michael, who now lived with his wife, Sarah, a woman who had never truly warmed to us since the day she married him. From the outside, we must have looked like a peaceful, ordinary old couple living out our quiet retirement. But that illusion shattered the day the doctors told us there was nothing more they could do, that my Edward had only hours left. As I watched our son Michael's helplessness, it was impossible not to notice the thinly veiled impatience behind Sarah's mask of grief. Her eyes weren't mourning her father-in-law. They were calculating what his death would mean for her. That hurt me more deeply than the thought of losing Edwin himself. When the final moment came, Edward squeezed my hand with all the strength he could muster. He gestured for me to lean closer, his voice barely a whisper between ragged breaths. Margaret, in the bedroom, the chest, inside the chest. At that moment, I didn't understand what he meant by the chest. My mind was numb with grief. The world was collapsing around me. But something in his eyes, that last look, and the way Sarah began quietly assessing the house before Edward's body was even cold, carved his final words into my heart like a warning. That chest held something vital. The funeral was crowded, faces blurred behind my tears. Every "I'm so sorry for your loss" echoed like a hollow refrain. All I could think about was that single word my husband had whispered, the chest. When we finally returned home, Michael withdrew into silence, but Sarah, ever composed, took charge of the condolence gathering as if she were arranging a social event. Even while handing out coffee to guests, her eyes darted around the living room, cataloging the furniture, the ornaments, the house itself. Her false composure only deepened the dread coiling inside me. Then suddenly, Edward's words struck me again. The chest in the bedroom. A chill ran down my spine. That old wooden chest, which I'd always thought of as nothing more than a box of memories, now felt like the heart of a secret my husband had carried to his grave. Sarah slid beside me through the crowd and whispered, ever so gently, "Mother dear, don't strain yourself. But you know we'll soon need some of Dad's documents, pension forms, bank details, all that. Perhaps you could tell me where he kept them." Her tone was sweet, but her intent was clear as crystal. She wanted access to the bedroom and to that chest. Gathering what strength I had left, I muttered something about Edward's study, pretending to be too distraught to think clearly. She took the hint and walked away. But I knew, with the weight of that secret pressing down on my heart, that I had to reach that chest first before anyone else did. As the guests slowly drifted away and the heavy, suffocating silence settled over the house, my husband's absence hit me like a slap across the face. From the kitchen came the clatter of dishes, hurried, restless, and that sound alone told me that Sarah hadn't left yet. On the contrary, she was already rearranging things, as if she were claiming the place for herself. The thought filled me with such panic that my need to reach the chest became almost unbearable. When she brought me a glass of water and said, "Mother dear, you must be exhausted. Why don't you go and rest in your bedroom? I'll tidy up and bring you a clean nightdress from the wardrobe." Her voice sounded soft, almost caring, but when her eyes flicked for just a second toward my bedroom door, I knew exactly what she was thinking. She wanted to get in there with me. I gathered every ounce of strength and sank deeper into Edward's old armchair, the one still carrying his scent. I murmured that I only wanted to sit here, alone, surrounded by his memory, that going into the bedroom would make the loss feel too raw. The truth was, until I discovered what secret lay in that chest, no one, especially not Sarah, would set foot in that room. Michael, broken and pale, whispered, "Mom, we'll head home for tonight. We'll come back early in the morning." When the door finally shut behind them and the lock clicked, I realized, for the first time in 50 years, I was alone in this house, and I knew there was only one thing left for me to do. My feet carried me, trembling, through the hallway toward the room that held half a century of our memories. With every step, my heart pounded harder, as if warning me to turn back. But when my fingers brushed against the cold brass handle, a strange resolution took hold. I had to know why Edward had trusted me with this secret, and why Sarah was so desperate to find it. The creak of the door cut through the silence like a scream. As I stepped inside, the faint scent of Edward's pillow and sheets enveloped me, so strong it felt as though he might speak any second. The pain washed over me anew. For a moment, I almost closed the door and fled, but then my eyes adjusted to the dim light, and there it was, at the foot of our bed, the same old carved wooden chest that had stood there for 50 years. Once, it had been nothing more than a relic of our youth, filled with keepsakes, lace from my trousseau, Michael's first shoes, little tokens of our life together. Now it had become something else entirely, a vault guarding a secret I was no longer sure I wanted to uncover. As I approached, my legs felt heavy as lead. Even the familiar chill of the wood beneath my fingertips seemed different. My mind swirled with questions. What could Edward have been hiding from me? And why speak of it only in his final breath, with Sarah's greedy eyes fixed upon us? Then I noticed it, the small rusted padlock on the chest, one I had never paid attention to before. My heart began to race. That lock was proof that whatever lay inside had been deliberately hidden and protected. I went to Edward's bedside table, the one he always used for what he called his bits and pieces. Inside a small tin box, just as I'd suspected, lay the tiny iron key. As I held it in my palm, the cool metal sent a shiver through me. This key didn't just open a chest, it unlocked my husband's other life, and perhaps the truth about who Sarah really was. When I held that tiny key in my hand, my fingers trembled uncontrollably. It felt as though I was about to lift the curtain on the final act of the life Edward and I had shared for 50 years. My curiosity about what the lock concealed was tangled with a deep, gnawing fear. The fear of what truth might be waiting for me inside. The faint click of the padlock breaking open echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. As I lifted the heavy wooden lid, the smell of age, dust, cedar, and mothballs rose up to meet me, carrying me back to my youth, to the days when that chest had been filled with dreams and hope. But Edward's dying words shattered any trace of nostalgia. The first things I saw were the keepsakes I'd placed there decades ago. Michael's first baby shoe, our faded wedding photographs, the lace cloths that once belonged to my mother. For a moment I wondered if Edward's memory had simply failed him in his final hours, if perhaps he'd only wanted me to remember our life together through these innocent relics. I almost laughed through my tears. Was this it, Edward? I whispered to myself. But then I remembered the weight in his eyes, that last look of urgency, and I realized these memories alone wouldn't have made Sarah, a woman greedy enough to calculate inheritances before the body was cold, so desperate. The real secret had to be hidden deeper. I carefully moved the old lace aside, and that's when my fingers touched something hard, cold, and out of place beneath the soft fabric. My breath caught. It was Edward's old leather briefcase, the one he used to carry to work years ago, which had mysteriously disappeared one day. He had hidden it beneath my wedding linens, beneath the most personal corners of my life, as if burying a confession inside my memories. As I pulled it free, a shiver ran down my spine. The way he'd concealed it, so deliberately and intimately, made me realize that whatever lay within was not only hidden from the world, but from me. I placed the briefcase on the bed. The sight of the brass 3-digit combination lock froze me in place. Edward hadn't trusted a simple key. He'd chosen a code, something only he knew. That alone told me how important this secret must have been. My hands shook as I ran my fingers over the cold metal numbers. I tried everything I could think of. Our wedding date, Michael's birthday, even the day we first met. But the damned lock wouldn't budge, as if Edward himself was standing guard, refusing to let me in. Then, amid my frustration, I heard it, a faint creak from the hallway. Probably just the old floorboards settling, I told myself, but my heart leapt into my throat. What if it wasn't? What if Sarah had come back on some excuse, watching me through the keyhole even now? I held my breath, paralyzed. That was when I understood. Putting the briefcase back in the chest would be useless. By morning, Sarah would be tearing through the house like a vulture. So I made a choice, the riskiest and perhaps the most necessary decision of my life. Instead of returning the case to the chest, I pushed it deep under my bed, beneath the winter quilts, right to the farthest corner, and covered it in haste. For now, it was safe. But I knew that whatever was locked inside that case would not stay buried for long. I didn't sleep that night, not from grief so much as from the weight of that locked briefcase tucked under my bed. It lay there like some unseen clock, ticking away in my mind, and when the doorbell rang before dawn, my heart jumped into my mouth. As if on cue, Sarah had returned, not to comfort me, but to take control of the house, just as she'd promised she would. "Mother dear, I've brought you some warm pastries for breakfast. Michael's just popped down to the registry to sort the death certificate," she said, pressing a mock-tender kiss to my cheek. But even as she smiled, her eyes flicked over the rooms and landed on the bedroom door I'd kept shut the night before. I saw then that her kindness was only a disguise for prying. When she moved toward the kitchen and came back with a cup of tea, she tried the first maneuver. "Don't worry, Mom. You look exhausted. I'll fetch you a cozy cardigan from your wardrobe, and while I'm there, we can look for those documents I mentioned." It sounded harmless, too harmless. I knew exactly what she meant. She wanted access to the bedroom, to the chest, to whatever my Edward had whispered about on his last breath. Using the last of my composure as armor, I whispered, "No, Sarah, please don't. I'm not ready to go in there yet. Edward's scent is still in the room. I just want to sit here in his chair for a while." Her face flashed, disappointment, then anger, but she masked it quickly. "All right, Mom, as you wish," she said, stepping back. I knew that was only a temporary truce. I had to find that 3-digit combination before she thought to try anything else. While she fussed around opening and closing cupboards as if she owned the place, my head was elsewhere. The briefcase under my bed consumed my every thought. Edward would never have left me with a riddle he didn't intend me to solve. He would have hidden the code somewhere only I would think to look. Something meaningful to us, meaningless to anyone else. A moment of opportunity came when Sarah switched on the vacuum cleaner. The loud drone of the machine gave me a few precious minutes. I hauled myself up and slipped into Edward's study like a shadow. His drawers were my last hope. There was one secret drawer he always kept locked, its key hidden where only I would find it. I opened it and rifled through the old bills and receipts until at the very bottom I found his battered dark brown diary. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Tucked near the back fell a small yellowed calendar square, a scrap I'd seen 100 times. Around a date he'd circled in his own handwriting, he'd scribbled a short note, 482. The numerals might have meant nothing to anyone else, but a cold certainty settled over me. This was the code. I clenched the little calendar scrap marked 482 in my palm, as though it were a burning coal, its edges biting into my skin. The whir of the vacuum cleaner in the next room was my only shield, a fragile noise that could vanish any second. I knew that once it stopped, Sarah might appear out of nowhere like a ghost. I quickly returned the diary to its drawer, locked it, and closed the study door behind me. The moment I stepped into the corridor, the vacuum fell silent. The sudden hush was deafening. When I looked up, Sarah was standing there, her eyes locked on me. The faintest flicker of suspicion crossed her face, and I felt the blood drain from mine. "Did you need something, Mum? You shouldn't tire yourself. she said, her voice laced with false concern. In that instant, I didn't feel like a grieving widow. I felt like a criminal guarding my secret. Clutching the wall for balance, I whispered, "I just wanted to smell Edward's old cardigan. It gives me strength." She seemed satisfied, or pretended to be. But as she guided me back to my chair, saying, "Let me get it for you, don't strain yourself," I saw her preparing to slip into the bedroom. Then, mercifully, her handbag began to ring. "Honestly, can't they do a simple inheritance transfer without bothering me?" she snapped into the phone, no doubt speaking to Michael, before stepping out onto the balcony for air. The moment she disappeared, I realized this was it, my one chance. Every nerve in my body screamed as I rose and crept toward the bedroom, my heart pounding like a drum. From the balcony, I heard her voice, sharper now. "That money is ours, Michael. Ours, do you hear me?" Her words sent a chill through me, but also fueled my resolve. Whatever Edward had hidden, it was meant to protect us, or perhaps protect me from them. I lifted the creaking bed frame as quietly as I could, my hands groping through the quilts until I found the cold leather of the briefcase. Hauling it onto the bed, I could almost feel time ticking against me. Any second she could hang up that phone and walk in. My palms were slick with sweat as I set the brass lock to the numbers 482. Was I about to uncover the secret of my 50-year marriage, or the proof that it had all been a lie? When the latch finally clicked open, the sound rang out louder than her voice outside. Clear, sharp, final. The lock had yielded. Edward had trusted me. He hadn't left me to the mercy of that greedy woman. A strange, aching pride swelled in my chest. But when I lifted the lid, what I found wasn't old love letters or photographs. At the top lay a neat stack of property deeds I had never seen before, followed by a bank book from an account I didn't recognize, and beneath them all a folded envelope with my name written on it in Edward's careful handwriting. That was the moment I realized my husband's secret was far greater than I had ever imagined. The unfamiliar bank book I pulled from the case was icy cold in my hands. Opening it, the balance printed inside made my head spin. A sum so vast I could not believe my Edward, who'd lived on what I thought was a modest pension, had kept such a fortune from me. My eyes slid from the bank book to the thick bundle of title deeds beneath it. As I fanned them out, I read the names of streets and neighborhoods I'd never heard of. Plots, shops, and flats dotted across parts of town I did not recognize. The truth hit me like a blow. Edward hadn't just hidden money from me, he'd quietly built an entire property portfolio without my knowledge. Then I heard the balcony door slam and Sarah's angry shout, "That's enough, Michael, shut up." The weight of the documents in my hands suddenly felt 10 times heavier. Panic made my fingers clumsy. I shoved the deeds and the bank book back into the briefcase in a flurry. The zipper jammed. In that frantic moment, I grabbed the sealed envelope on top, the one addressed in Edward's neat hand, "To my dear wife, Margaret." I stuffed it into the pocket of my nightgown and shoved the heavy case back into the darkest corner beneath the bed just as Sarah's footsteps began to echo down the corridor. Holding the bed frame for support, I forced a calm expression on my face, as if I'd merely been straightening Edward's pillow, and stood. Sarah was leaning in the doorway, arms folded, her eyes cutting into me with suspicion. "Are you all right, Mum? You look a little pale," she said, but her cut glass stare told me she believed I was hiding something in that room. Under that relentless look, I felt crushed, not only by Edward's loss, but by the crushing knowledge of the fortune I'd found and the fear of being discovered. I pressed my hand to my chest and in the most convincing voice I could summon, murmured that I'd entered the room only to breathe in his cardigan scent and that I'd felt faint because that scent was already fading. Even as she pretended sympathy. "Of course, Mum, it's been hard for you," she said, but her gaze skittered around the room as if searching for what I had tucked away. She clung to my arm like a hook and began to haul me toward the door. "You'll worry yourself more staying here. Michael will be back any minute. We need to talk to the solicitor, sort out the probate, the house, the car, his little pension, all the paperwork," she rattled on, leading the conversation straight back to money. Her true aim was always clear: locate whatever remained of Edward's estate, no matter my state. Summoning every shred of strength, I slipped free from her grip and sank on the edge of the bed, breathless. "Could you fetch me a glass of water, Sarah? My blood pressure's dropped. I feel dizzy," I said, collapsing as if I might faint. It was the only way. Send her to the kitchen, buy myself the minutes I needed to read what Edward had left me. She bristled with impatience, but could not refuse. "All right, Mum, I'll get it," she said, and left the room. As soon as the door clicked shut and I was sure she had gone, I slipped my hand into the pocket of my nightgown and with trembling fingers drew out the sealed envelope. Edward's final secret, which now felt more important than deeds or bank books.
The unfamiliar bank book felt like ice in my hands. When I opened it and saw the balance, a sum so vast it made my head swim, I could not fathom how Edward, who'd lived on what I believed was a modest pension, had hidden such a fortune from me. My eyes slid to the thick bundle of title deeds beneath it. As I fanned them out, I read the names of streets and neighborhoods I had never heard of, plots, shops, and flats across the city. The blow hit me. Edward hadn't merely hidden money. He had quietly built a property empire without my knowledge. At that moment, the balcony door slammed, and I heard Sarah's angry voice, "That's enough, Michael, shut up." The weight of those papers suddenly felt 10 times heavier. In a panic, I shoved the deeds and the bank book back into the briefcase. The zipper wouldn't close. In my haste, I snatched the sealed envelope on top, addressed in Edward's neat hand, to my dear wife Margaret, and stuffed it into the pocket of my nightgown. I shoved the heavy case back into the darkest corner beneath the bed, just as I heard Sarah's footsteps in the corridor. I steadied myself against the bed and stood, forcing a calm expression as if I'd only been straightening Edward's pillow. Sarah waited in the doorway, arms folded, her eyes dissecting me with suspicion. "Are you all right, Mum? You look a little pale," she said, but her stare told me she believed I was hiding something in that room. Under that ruthless gaze, I felt crushed, not only by Edward's passing, but by the knowledge of the fortune I'd found and the terror of being discovered. I pressed my hand to my chest and with the most convincing voice I could muster, murmured that I'd come in only to breathe the scent of his cardigan and that the smell was already fading and had made me faint. Even as she feigned sympathy, "Of course, Mom, you've had a hard time." Her eyes kept scanning the room, hunting for whatever I'd tucked away. She clung to my arm and began to pull me toward the door. "You'll worry yourself more staying here. Michael will be back any minute. We must speak to the solicitor tomorrow about probate, the house, the car, his little pension," she rattled, steering the conversation straight back to money. Her true aim was plain: locate whatever remained of Edward's estate, whatever it might be. Summoning every scrap of strength, I slipped from her grip and sank to the edge of the bed. "Could you fetch me a glass of water, Sarah? My blood pressure's dropped. I feel faint," I gasped, as if I might lose consciousness. It was the only way. Send her to the kitchen, buy myself the minutes I needed to read Edward's final words. She bristled with impatience, but could not refuse. "All right, Mum, I'll get it," she said, and left. As soon as the door clicked shut, I slid my hand into the pocket of my nightgown and with trembling fingers drew out the sealed envelope, Edward's last secret, which now felt more precious than deeds or bank books. I tore it open like a woman ripping free from a lie. The handwriting was his, hesitant and familiar. "My dear Margaret, my one and only, if you are reading this, I am no longer in that false world. Forgive me, not for the secrets I kept, but because you trusted me enough to hide them from harm." He told me then how our son Michael had changed, how Sarah's insatiable hunger for money had pulled him away, how for the past 2 years they had been siphoning funds from Edward on the pretext that Michael's business was failing. He had even been pressuring us to sell the house and move to somewhere smaller. The money I'd got was for helping Michael grow his business, was actually the first steps in their plan to strip us bare. The real devastation came when I read the lines about the last 6 months, how Michael and Sarah had been trying to have my Edward declared incapacitated, labeling him senile and not of sound mind, in order to secure a court-appointed guardian and gain legal control of his assets while he was still alive. That was why Edward had hidden the fortune at the bottom of that chest beneath my linens, because that money was our only protection. At the end of his letter, he wrote, "That money is your life insurance, Margaret. Trust them not. Do not show pity." I sat frozen, the betrayal of my child like an ice blast through my chest. Then footsteps in the corridor and Sarah's voice, "Here you go, Mum. I've brought you the cold water," snapped me back. I folded the precious letter and tucked it again into my nightgown, pressed it to my heart. As she handed me the glass, my hands trembled not only from grief, but from the shock of the revelation. My own son had been part of this. When I looked at Sarah's false pity, I no longer saw an awkward, grasping daughter-in-law. I saw the woman who had turned my husband's last days into torment, who had poisoned my son's mind, and now sought to take even my final morsel. When she pulled me from the bedroom and sat me like a prisoner in the living room armchair, the front door opened and Michael came in, collapsed with grief, but already cowed under her will. Sarah immediately began again. "Love, we were just talking. We must call the solicitor tomorrow to sort the estate." Looking at my son, the same boy I raised, now bent and shamefaced, I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. The man who'd sought to have his father declared unfit and seize his estate was impossibly my own blood. In that moment, I understood that my fight would not be only against Sarah. It would be against the son she had turned into her puppet.
When I saw Michael bow his head in shame and Sarah immediately seized the moment, turning my husband's death into a balance sheet, I felt bile rise in my throat. Love, we were just saying we should call the solicitor first thing tomorrow. The sooner the better. These things can't wait. There's the pension transfer, the house bills. Her words turned the house into an accountancy office, and even before the body was cold, she was already counting her share of that small legacy. Michael, my son, would not meet my eyes. Instead, he mumbled, "Fine, Sarah, whatever you think is best. We'll do it that way. Mum shouldn't worry." And by averting his gaze, he confirmed how entirely she had bent his will. Each syllable of Edward's letter suddenly felt like a knife in my ribs. Emboldened by his silent assent, Sarah sidled close to me, all feigned concern. "You can't stay in this big house on your own, Mum. We've thought about what's best for you. We'll speak to a solicitor and arrange to sell the house. You could move in with us or to a smaller, nice care home. It'll cost less. You'll be safe." At that moment, I finally understood why Edward had whispered "the chest" on his last breath. He'd been trying to keep me safe from these two heartless people. Something inside me snapped. The grief and fury I'd been holding in burst outward. I stopped crying, and for the first time, I found my voice. "No one," I said, "no one is calling my lawyer. There will be no talk of selling this house or of the estate until the full term of mourning is over. Do you hear me?" My words came out cold and steady, not the broken, helpless woman they expected. The shock on both Sarah's and Michael's faces, the sudden realization that their plan had been interrupted, was a small, fierce triumph. The power Edward's letter had given me was only just beginning. Sarah's brief, stunned silence melted into the usual venomous smile. Turning to Michael, she sneered, "See, Mother doesn't even know what she's saying." Her intent was clear: paint me as delirious with grief and dismiss my resolve. Michael accepted the cue like a puppet. He moved closer, adopting the practiced show of concern, placing a hand on my shoulder and whispering, "Mom, Sarah only wants what's best. These legal matters won't wait. We shouldn't delay." He swallowed the blame he could have placed on himself and instead defended the woman who had corrupted him. I could not bear the weight of his hand on my shoulder another second. Summoning every scrap of dignity left to me, I gently but firmly pushed his hand away and held his gaze. The first time I'd looked at him unflinchingly since the letter. "I know exactly what I am saying, and I know who truly has my interests at heart, Michael," I told him. My voice no longer trembled with sorrow alone. It had hardened into the voice of someone ready to fight. At that, Sarah's faux tenderness evaporated. With a voice as cold as ice, she said, "Very well, Mrs. Margaret. If you insist on throwing your husband's legacy to the street lawyers, then so be it." She grabbed Michael's arm without a second thought and hissed, "Come on, Michael. If she wants to soak alone in this house, let her. We'll go. She'll see how sensible our plan was." She slammed the door in my face as she left, an ugly ultimatum: obey us or rot alone. What they did not know was this: I was no longer alone. I had Edward's secret, that bitter, precious fortune he had hidden, and with it came the strength to stand.
When the front door slammed in my face and the house sank into that deep, grave-like silence, something shifted in me. For the first time since Edward was gone, I didn't feel small and bereft. I felt protected by him. His last letter and that hidden fortune had become my shield. The woman sitting in his armchair was no longer a helpless widow. She was a woman who had learned of her child's treachery and now held the means to strike back. I rose slowly and, without the pressure of Sarah hovering over me, went into Edward's bedroom, not like a furtive thief, but like the rightful owner of a secret. I unfolded the crumpled letter from my nightgown and read again those devastating lines about Michael trying to have his father declared of unsound mind so they could install a guardian. With each sentence, the soft maternal grief in me hardened into a cold, steady fury. There was no longer any need to rush. I lifted the heavy leather case from beneath the bed and laid it out on the sheets. This time, I didn't fumble. I studied the deeds in the bank book as a commander studies a map, gradually realizing that what Sarah had sneered at as that little pension money and the old car was not paltry at all, but the kind of fortune that could undo the false life they had been building. If I was to fight back, I would need a solicitor I could trust, someone utterly loyal, someone Edward himself had trusted with our affairs. I thought of the framed photograph on the bedside table, Edward smiling at me as he always did, and I made a vow, quiet and fierce. "Don't worry, Edward. Your trust is safe with me. Your revenge will be mine." Even as the echo of the slammed door still hung in the rooms, I knew Sarah's abandonment wasn't forgetfulness. It was strategy, a calculated move to break me. They would be back at my door in the morning, eager to hunt down that meager legacy. I had to be ready. Edward had mentioned an old friend in the letter, a fellow ex-serviceman who had handled our legal matters for years. The honest solicitor I knew only as someone Edward trusted. He had been edged out lately by Michael, who'd complained that he was getting old and slow. That man was my only hope. Charles Reed, steady, principled, the sort of solicitor who would not be bought. I reached for the house phone in the sitting room and then froze. The bill for that line for the past year had been paid by Michael. Calling Charles on that line would ring alarm bells in Sarah's sharp mind. They might even be monitoring the phone. I couldn't risk it. Then I remembered the old handset Edward kept tucked away in a drawer, the little button phone, the pay-as-you-go one with a handful of credit he used for emergencies. It was outdated and almost laughable in the age of smartphones, but that tiny thing had become my secret gateway out of this technological cage. Hands shaking, I dialed Charles Reed's number from that little phone, slipped into the cold cellar where Edward kept his tools, and huddled by the heavy door. When I heard the muffled ringing on the other end, I knew the pretense of being a helpless victim was over. I had taken the first step toward whatever came next, and for the first time since Edward's last breath, I felt like I was moving toward him, not away.
Those few seconds between the old handset at my ear and the sturdy, reassuring hello from Charles Reed, the one man my Edward trusted above all, felt like an eternity, as if each tick would be the moment Sarah returned. When I finally croaked, "Mr. Reed, I'm Margaret, Edward's wife," my whisper echoed off the cold cellar walls. He offered his condolences in that calm, measured voice I knew from years of business with him. Then, after a pause, said quietly, "Mrs. Margaret, you don't sound well. Is something wrong?" Edward came to see me before he asked me to speak with you privately. In that instant, I understood Edward had not faced this betrayal alone. He'd prepared a lifeline. I gathered every ounce of courage and spoke quickly. "Mr. Reed, I'm alone at home, but they could return any minute. Michael and his wife Sarah intend to call a solicitor before the morning's over to have me removed from this house and placed somewhere else. Please, you must know, in Edward's locked briefcase there are deeds, a bank book, and a letter confessing that Michael tried to have his father declared incapable." I rattled off the facts, breathless, until the line at the other end fell into a heavy, sorrowful silence. "Ah, Mrs. Margaret, ah," Charles sighed. "Edward was worn down these last 6 months. He told me, in tears, how Michael, egged on by his wife, had tried to have him declared unfit. Everything in that case was put away to protect you. I'm so glad you called." Relief washed away the last of my pity. His voice hardened, businesslike. "Do not leave the house. We can't be sure they're not watching your movements. The documents must be secured. I'll send my most trusted courier, a man I treat like a son. Seal the case in a way no one but he can open. Hand it to him and leave the rest to me." That was my first order. The war had begun. A few days later, Sarah dragged me, as she had planned, into the solicitor's office of the smug lawyer she'd hired, her face and Michael's lined with the fake grief of those who think they already own the prize. They expected me to sign blindly, to hand over the house and be ushered into the smaller, nicer life they'd planned for me. Inside, their greed hung in the air like smoke. Then the office door flew open. Charles Reed stood there, solemn as a judge, and stepped in with Edward's locked leather briefcase under his arm. For a few seconds, I savored the look on Sarah's face as triumph curdled into confusion. Without a word, he sat, unclasped the case, and laid out, square on the desk, the stack of title deeds, the bank book, whose balance made Sarah's smug smile evaporate, each document a refutation of her dismissive old car jibe. The real blow came when he tossed, plain for everyone to see, a copy of the shameful guardianship petition, the file Michael had lodged asking the court to declare his father incapable. Michael's face went gray. He slumped in his chair. Sarah screamed, "It's a lie! It's slander!" But the paper on the desk spoke louder than her protests. Every word of Edward's letter had been vindicated. I rose slowly and looked at them. The woman who'd made my husband's final months a torment, and the son who'd become her willing instrument. Then I turned to Charles and said with a clarity that surprised even me, "Mr. Reed, begin proceedings. Start the formal actions to disown this child if necessary. File to have the guardianship petition declared null and void, and pursue whatever steps are required
against this fraudulent scheme. Edward's last words were, "Do not pity them, and I will not